April 28, 1945, Northwest Germany. A single-lane country road cuts through farmland near the village of Oldendorf, 12 kilometers west of the Weser River. The trees on either side are thin and leafless. The road bends slightly ahead, obscured by a low ridge. A column of German infantry has stopped moving, 43 men facing south. No vehicles, weapons loaded. They stand in two rough lines along the shoulder, pressed against a hedgerow that offers no real cover. Officers are at the front. No one speaks. Down the road, around the bend, engine noise, heavy, multiple vehicles, American. The sound grows steadily louder. The men have been issued orders. The weapons are positioned. Fingers rest near triggers. The column does not move. The engines approach. The bend in the road is less than 200 meters away. No one fires. The German unit is a composite formation assembled 3 days prior from remnants of the 15th Panzergrenadier Division. They had been retreating east from the Ruhr pocket for 9 days. Most of their heavy equipment had been abandoned. They retained small arms, 2 MG-42 machine guns, and a limited supply of Panzerfaust launchers. Ammunition was mixed. No standardization. No resupply. The unit's commanding officer is Hauptmann Klaus Reimer, age 31. He had served in France in 1940, Russia in 1942 and 1943, and returned to Germany in late 1944. He is gaunt. His uniform is clean but patched. He wears no decorations. His rank insignia is faded. The column had been marching along secondary roads for 2 days, avoiding contact with British and American reconnaissance units pushing east. Their objective, as stated in the last written order they received, was to reach a designated assembly area near Hameln. That area had been overrun by Allied forces 48 hours earlier. The men know this. Reimer knows this. The order stands because no subsequent order has arrived. The American vehicles are Sherman tanks and half-tracks from the 5th Armored Division. They are conducting a road sweep, standard procedure. They expect no resistance. Intelligence reports have indicated scattered German units in the area, all assessed as demoralized and unlikely to engage. The doctrine is clear. An ambush on a narrow road with prepared positions and anti-tank weapons offers the highest probability of disrupting armored advance. Doctrine states that even a temporary delay can provide operational value. The element of surprise compensates for material disadvantage. The standard engagement sequence is well rehearsed. Allow the lead vehicle to pass the kill zone, destroy the second vehicle to block the column, engage remaining targets from concealment. The men have trained for this. Most have executed similar actions. The procedure is ingrained. The Panzerfaust teams are positioned at intervals along the hedgerow. The machine guns have interlocking fields of fire. The range is optimal. The angle of approach favors the defenders. The terrain prevents rapid maneuver by the attacking force. Reimer has conducted 9 such engagements since 1941. He understands timing. He understands fire discipline. He understands the value of the first volley. His orders to the unit delivered 2 hours earlier were precise. Engagement criteria: armored vehicles within effective range, favorable target distribution, confirmed absence of flanking reconnaissance. All criteria are met. The men wait. The sound of engines clarifies, tracks on asphalt. The vibration carries through the ground. The lead vehicle will appear within seconds. The Panzerfaust gunner nearest the bend adjusts his grip. The machine gunner shifts his weight. Reimer stands 3 meters behind the line, eyes fixed on the road. This is what happens. This is what has always happened. The lead Sherman rounds the bend, turret facing forward, hatch open, commander visible, range 180 meters. Reimer does not give the order, the tank continues. The second vehicle appears, a half-track infantry visible in the rear compartment, range 160 meters. Reimer does not give the order, the column extends, 4 more vehicles. The kill zone is fully occupied, the angle is perfect. The crews have not seen the German position. Reimer raises his left hand. The signal is not for engagement, it is a flat palm held still. The universal gesture for halt, for wait, for do nothing. The men see it. They do not fire, they do not move. The Panzerfaust remains shouldered but not aimed. The machine gun does not traverse. The column passes, 150 meters, 120, 90, still no order. The hand remains raised. The vehicles move through the kill zone and continue south. The engine noise begins to fade. Reimer lowers his hand. He turns and walks back along the column. He says nothing. The men remain in position. They watch the road. The dust from the American vehicles settles slowly. The sound of engines diminishes but does not disappear. The column has not stopped. It has continued south toward Hameln. No explanation is given. Reimer walks to the rear of the formation and speaks briefly with his senior NCO, Feldwebel Ernst Vogel. The conversation is inaudible to the rest of the unit. It lasts less than 30 seconds. Vogel nods. He does not question. He returns to his position and signals the men to stand down but remain in place. Minutes pass. The hedgerow offers partial concealment but no comfort. The men lower their weapons but do not sling them. Some glance at Reimer, most stare at the road. The tactical situation has not changed. The road remains exposed. The terrain remains favorable. Another column could appear at any time. No orders are issued. The unit does not move. The silence is not peaceful. It is heavy. It presses against expectation. The men had prepared to fire. The preparation remains unresolved. The tension does not dissipate, it redistributes, it becomes internal. 15 minutes pass. Reimer walks back to the front of the column. He examines the road. He looks south, then north. He removes his cap, wipes his forehead, replaces the cap. He does not address the men. He turns to Vogel and gestures north. Vogel issues quiet orders. The column begins to move. They march north, away from the road they had been following. They leave no sign of their presence. The hedgerow shows no damage. The road's surface is undisturbed. Reimer had received no communication from higher command for 4 days. The last order had directed movement toward an assembly area that no longer existed. The chain of command was fractured. There was no operational context. There was no strategic objective. The engagement would produce tactical results that served no purpose. The destruction of the American column would have required the expenditure of remaining ammunition. It would have revealed the position of the German unit. American forces would respond with artillery and air support. The terrain offered no fallback position. The unit would be destroyed within 2 hours. The men under Reimer's command were exhausted. Most had marched over 100 kilometers in the previous 2 weeks. Rations were minimal. Medical supplies were depleted. 4 men were injured and traveling on foot with difficulty. The unit's cohesion depended on continued movement and avoidance of engagement. The war's outcome was no longer in question. Reimer had been briefed on the fall of Berlin 3 days earlier by a retreating signals officer. He had seen the refugee columns moving east. He had observed the collapse of civil and military order. He understood the operational reality. Continued resistance would not alter the conclusion. It would only determine how many of his men survived to reach it. He made the assessment in the seconds before the lead vehicle entered effective range. He withheld the order. The decision was procedural. It was tactical. It was immediate. It required no justification and no announcement. The column marches north for 6 kilometers. They avoid roads. They move through fields and along tree lines. The pace is steady but not rapid. Reimer maintains interval between men, standard procedure. They cross a shallow stream at a ford used by farm equipment. The water is cold and clear. At dusk they stop in a forested area south of Rinteln. Sentries are posted. No fires are lit. Men eat from remaining rations. Some speak quietly, most do not. Vogel approaches Reimer and asks about the morning's decision. Reimer tells him it was not necessary to engage. Vogel asks no further questions. The conversation ends. 2 men from the Panzerfaust team sit together near the edge of the tree line. One removes the warhead from his launcher and inspects it. The chemical propellant is still viable. He reassembles the weapon and sets it aside. Neither man discusses what occurred. They sleep in shifts. The following morning, the column resumes movement north. They encounter no enemy forces. At midday, they reach a secondary road and observe a British reconnaissance patrol moving west. Reimer orders the unit to remain concealed. The patrol passes without incident. The unit continues north. By evening on April 29, they have covered 18 kilometers. They are 12 kilometers south of the British advance. Reimer gathers his officers and informs them that he intends to surrender the unit to Allied forces within 48 hours. He states that continued independent movement serves no purpose. The officers acknowledge the decision. No objections are raised. The unit surrenders to elements of the British 11th Armored Division on May 1, 1945, near the town of Buchberg. The surrender is conducted without incident. Weapons are collected and inventoried. The men are processed and transferred to a temporary holding area. No interrogation of significance is conducted. Reimer provides basic information regarding unit designation and chain of command. He does not mention the engagement that did not occur. There is no record of the incident in German military files. Reimer's unit had operated independently for over a week. No after-action reports were filed. The war ended 7 days after the surrender. Records from the final weeks of the conflict are incomplete. American after-action reports from the 5th Armored Division covering the period of April 27–30, 1945, note routine movement through the Oldendorf area. No contact with enemy forces is recorded. The absence of engagement generated no documentation. Events that do not occur leave no trace in operational logs. None of the men in Reimer's unit were charged with war crimes. None were detained beyond the standard period for demobilization. They were released between June and August 1945. Most returned to civilian life in Germany. Some emigrated. Contact between former unit members was infrequent. Reimer himself provided no written account of the decision. He was interviewed briefly by British intelligence in May 1945 as part of routine processing. The interview covered basic biographical data and service history. He was asked no questions about specific engagements. Klaus Reimer returned to his family home near Heidelberg in September 1945. His father, a schoolteacher, had died in an air raid in 1944. His mother and younger sister had survived. He worked as a laborer in reconstruction efforts for 2 years, then trained as a civil engineer. He married in 1948. He had 2 children. He spoke rarely of his military service. In 1953, Reimer attended a small gathering of former soldiers from his division. Vogel was present. They spoke briefly about the final weeks of the war. Vogel mentioned the incident on the road near Oldendorf. He asked Reimer directly why the order was not given. Reimer replied that the situation did not require it. Vogel accepted this. They did not discuss it again. Reimer worked as an engineer until his retirement in 1978. He lived quietly. He maintained no contact with military organizations or veterans groups. He declined requests for interviews from historians researching the final campaigns in Germany. He died in 1991 at the age of 77. Of the 43 men in the column, at least 38 survived the war. 7 died in the subsequent decades from causes unrelated to combat. 15 emigrated from Germany. Records indicate no pattern of continued association. The event was not commemorated. It was not discussed. It existed only as individual memory, unshared and unrecorded. A decision made in seconds. A column that passed. A road that remained empty of fire and wreckage. 43 men who walked north instead of engaging. 6 American vehicles that continued south, unaware. No investigation was conducted. No medal was withheld. No criticism was recorded. The incident occupied no space in official history. It was a non-event, a moment erased by its own absence. Wars are measured by what occurs. Battles documented. Casualties counted. Ground taken or lost. The record is built from action. What does not happen leaves no mark. The decision to withhold an order to not fire, to allow passage. These exist only in the memory of those present and then only briefly. The road near Oldendorf remains. It has been resurfaced multiple times. The hedgerow was removed in the 1960s during agricultural expansion. The bend in the road was straightened in 1972. No marker indicates that anything of significance occurred there. Nothing did. Klaus Reimer's flat palm raised and held still, a signal that negated expectation, a moment that dissolved into silence. The war ended days later. The column continued. The men walked north. The engagement never occurred. It is recorded here because it was remembered, briefly, incompletely, and then not at all.